We're going to look at question number 5. So we have the DNA structure. I'm going to go ahead and label before I do anything else. I know that this is a nitrogen base. I know this is a phosphate. And this is a sugar. That's already labeled for me, so I don't have to label that. Sugar, nitrogen base, phosphate. I know that in between here is a hydrogen bond, and that is weak. So now I wrote down everything that I know about that picture of DNA. It says the circled part of the diagram represents. It has a nitrogen base, a phosphate, and a sugar. Well, it's not a nitrogen base because I've already labeled that. A nucleotide, I think that's what it is, but I'm going to go down a little bit further and see the rest of the answers. A phosphate, well, here's my phosphate. That's only one part of what's circled, so that's not it. A simple DNA sequence, well, this is the sequence right here. So that's not it. So it is a nucleotide. Come down here to number 6. I know that this is DNA. These are my nitrogen bases. A is for adenine. T is for thymine. G is for guanine. And C is for cytosine. And there's hydrogen bonds. In between all of these nitrogen bases. All right, once I'm done writing everything that I know, I'm going to come down to the question. It says the letters in this section of DNA represent. Oh, those letters, well, I already labeled them as nitrogen bases. Adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. So A is the correct answer just from all the information that I already wrote. B is not the correct answer because we've never dealt with triphosphatine. The phosphates, well, these aren't phosphates. Those are the circles represented by the circles on the DNA. And D, ATP, glucose and carbon. ATP was with photosynthesis and cellular respiration, so that's incorrect. So A is the correct answer. Number 7 says in a double-stranded molecule of DNA, the amount of adenine should equal, well, if we come back up here, A goes with T. So A should equal T, and T stands for thymine. So B is the correct answer. Cytosine goes with guanine. Guanine goes with cytosine. So those aren't correct. And the phosphate, again, is a phosphate group attached to the sugar. Right, here we go again. Here's my phosphate. This is the sugar. These are my nitrogen bases. I'm going to label that NB. And this arrow, that's pointing to the hydrogen bond. Okay. And again, this is DNA. It's already labeled. Okay. So now I'm going to come down to the question. The arrow indicates, oh, I already labeled that. That's the hydrogen bond. So now I have to look for this. The bond between adjacent phosphates. Well, no, here's a phosphate. And here's a phosphate. No, that's not where the arrow is pointing. The junction of introns and exons, we've never talked about those words, so that's not going to be it. C, the hydrogen bonds between complementary nucleotides. Yeah, I didn't label that one. This whole section here is a nucleotide. The nucleotide, nitrogen-based sugar, and a phosphate. So I'm going to hold on to that one. That might be right. The junction of a codon and DNA triplet, we hadn't talked about codons and triplets yet. So that's not it. So my answer is going to be C. Number 9, characteristics such as a widow's peak or attached earlobes are determined by the genetic code. Gene. That's what's in the genetic code. Which components of DNA are referred to as the genetic code? The phosphate groups? Well, these are the phosphate groups. Those don't hold the code. That's the backbone. That's for structure. The nitrogen bases? Well, we did say a sequence of nitrogen bases is a gene. So this is going to be our correct answer. Deoxyribose? That is part of the sugar phosphate backbone. So that's not holding it. And the hydrogen bonds, that is what's connecting the two nucleotides or the nitrogen bases together. So that's not holding it. So B is the correct answer. Chains of nucleotides for number 10 bond together to form long, complex molecules which function are to control heredity information. Heredity information, that's DNA, genes. This structure is called a polysaccharide. Well, polysaccharide is a sugar, so that's not going to be it. A triglyceride, that's a fatty acid. We've never talked about either of those words, so that's not it. An amino acid chain, we haven't talked about that, so that's not it. So the correct answer is going to be DNA. Number 11, it says the organic molecules above are the basic building blocks. So I know that this is a sugar. It's a carbohydrate. Both of these are, because they both have a lot of hydroxide groups. This is a ribose and a deoxyribose. RNA, and I know that DNA stands for deoxyribose, nucleic acid. This is a vocabulary word. Deoxyribonucleic acid. Well, these are sugars, but it says it's a building block. So not a building block for sugar. It's not a building block for fats. Those are lipids. Nucleic acids. Yep, it's a nucleic acid, deoxyribonucleic acid. So I'm going to hold on to that one. And is it a protein, building blocks for proteins? No, because proteins need to have a nitrogen, and it doesn't have a nitrogen. So C is the correct answer, nucleic acids. Number 12, how does DNA in cells determine an organism's complex traits? Well, I know that DNA has the genes, and those are instructions or recipe. All right. So DNA contains the instructions. That's what I have here. For the growth and functioning of an organism. Sounds good. I'm going to hold on to it. DNA separates into long single strands that make up each part of an organism. Well, it's not a single strand, it's double, so that's wrong. DNA produces the energy no, not energy, that's ATP. DNA folds in the nucleus of each of the cells of an organism. We never talked about it folding. So the correct answer would be A. Number 13. This cycle, I know this cycle is the cell cycle. I know there's a checkpoint. Checkpoint for G1, which is all this area. I know there's a checkpoint after S. This S replicates DNA. So G1, this is for growth. G2, this is for growth. Mitosis is where the cell is going to split into two. Okay. It says the diagram shows the cell cycle. In which phase of the cell cycles does DNA replicate? Well, I wrote it already, making my notes. Well, it replicates in the S phase. These two are for growing and making new organelles. M is for mitosis, and that's where the cells divide. The cell's nucleus divides. Right? And then in cytokinesis, the whole cell divides. Number 15. I know that PMAT, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase. All right, prophase is the first one. Still has a nucleus. Metaphase, they're all lined up in the middle. Anaphase, I know that they're separating. And telophase kind of looks like that. So this one, they are separating, but there's not, telophase has the nucleus of each starting to form. So it says the cell in the diagram illustrates which stage of the mitotic cell division, mitosis. It's not metaphase, they're not in the middle. It's not telophase, we don't see two nucleus. It's not prophase because everything is, still together. So it's anaphase, they're moving away from one another. These are the chromosomes, and B are centrioles. So the letter B, those are going to be centrioles. Endoplasmic reticulum is an organelle that helps transport stuff. That's not it. Cell plate, that's not it. That's what starts to form before the cell actually divides. The cell plate, that's not it. And it's not paired chromosomes. So B is the correct answer.